good afternoon, good evening, and good night, depending on where in the world you are joining me from. I am Illuminati, and this is the Crypto and Cognac podcast show, as always, live every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. sharp Atlantic Standard Time, right here on YouTube. Checking in. And if I'm here, Stevie here. If Stevie here, Henny there, right? I didn't take this out of the studio last week, so it's still here. So we're gonna just do this again. We're gonna do some pure white, do something light, something smooth. You know how we do. Just a little smidge, to take an edge off. Guys, thank you as always for being with me for another week. Checking in. Yes, Stevie, hit them with the housekeeping one time. This is not a financial advisory podcast. Nothing on this podcast should be misconstrued as being financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, right? I drink Hennessy, I talk crypto, I chatted up with my boy Steven. I share a little bit about what I know, you share a little bit about what you know, and hopefully on the other side of that, we are a little bit more aware. We have a little bit more perspective, right? It's all about information, conversation, education, and sometimes a little bit of entertainment. Remember, as always, do not drink or degen irresponsibly, right? Today, Nooms, what's up, man? Today, we are talking about China, right? As the big dog Donald J. Trump calls them. I don't know. He has a particular fascination with China, and he hasn't let it go. And now things are escalating. We have been going back and forth. Last week we talked a little bit about tariffs, but we're going to go a little deeper because this week, in retaliation to China's retaliation tariffs, Trump has said, you know what? I'm going to put a pause on everybody else's tariffs. But you see them across there in China, they're going to have to pay the piper, right? And up to today, he upped those tariffs from 125% to 145%. Bro is not backing down, but China ain't backing down either, right? They've upped their tariffs on select American products up to as much as 84%. So we're going to talk a little bit about how these trade winds, these east-west trade winds, are affecting the digital currency here in the cryptic world of cryptocurrency. And we're going to do so through the lens of, I guess, what brought all this thing to a head, the fact that China has been and continues to dominate, the fact that China has become known as the world's manufacturer, right? We all know back in the day, if something was made in China, that was a knock on it, right? It was considered cheap, it was considered poorly done. But fast forward a few decades, everything, and I mean everything, is made in China. And how has it happened, right? What has happened over the last few decades, the last few years, that has put China in this position? What is responsible for China's dominance as far as manufacturing? Now, a few things. China has benefited from an extremely large workforce, right? There are more people than anybody else, right? And that workforce is or has been traditionally willing to work for what is comparatively low wages compared to what is paid or what would be paid in the West specifically for those same types of jobs. In addition to that, China has developed an extensive network of suppliers, manufacturers, distributors, and they've built out a really robust infrastructure to support the efficient production. And obviously, that helps them to reduce operational costs, that allows them to produce goods at even lower prices, a lot more affordably than most other places. The Chinese government has been backing this thing to the hilt, right? They have implemented policies that favor manufacturing growth, that include subsidies, tax incentives, investments in industrial infrastructure. I mean, they have been doing a lot. And many people argue that maybe this is the avenue that President Trump should have taken in terms of trying to get America to be competitive or be more competitive in the manufacturing space again, right? Instead of just going the route of tariffs, he should have been incentivizing American business to invest in the infrastructure, because even if we stop buying from China today, there's no platform in the West to make up for that shortfall in manufacturing. The next thing is that China has significantly invested in terms of technology, in terms of innovation, and in terms of their ability to produce sophisticated products and high-tech products, right? Recently, Apple CEO Tim Cook was on an interview, and he said that China has long stopped being the place to go for cheap production. But where they win out is that they have the technical skills needed to build some of these really, really intricate products, like Apple's products, iPhones and iPads and laptops and MacBooks and all these kind of things. China just has the technical capacity, the technical know-how to do it. And, they've even been kind of making fun of the idea that Americans are gonna be able to compete with this. Some memes have been going out spoofing what Americans in these factories would look like. And then America has largely been known as a consumer economy, whereas China has strategically focused on being an exporter, right? They have focused their energies specifically on being the biggest exporter, to the point where in 2024, the country benefited from an over $1 trillion trade surplus, right? Meaning that they exported more than they imported, which is not something that most countries could boast of. Now, in 2023, China accounted for approximately 29% of global manufacturing output, right? Let me give you a context for what that means. They are number one, right? But they are larger than the next four largest manufacturing economies combined. So they are larger than the US, Japan, Germany, and India combined. So China is for manufacturing what America is for, war expenditure, right? America has the biggest budget when it comes to their defense budget. China is America when it comes to manufacturing. In 2024 as well, the manufacturing sector contributed about almost $5 trillion towards China's GDP. Just under 25%, 24.86% of the nation's GDP came from the manufacturing sector. Now, conversely, manufacturing accounts for just about 10% of the US GDP, or around $2.41 trillion. Interesting, there's a tagline that got President Trump elected: "Make America Great Again." And maybe this is what he's talking about. Because back in the 1950s, manufacturing accounted for 20 to 25% of America's GDP. So maybe he wants to build that back. But a lot of people think that he's going about it the wrong way. The next thing, height, like I just said in reference to Apple and Tim Cook, high-tech manufacturing has expanded significantly in terms of China, increasing by almost 10% year on year from 2023 to 2024, and is on pace to repeat that in 2025. So China is not just manufacturing cheap T-shirts and socks and drawers and them kind of thing anymore. China has become the go-to manufacturer for high-tech goods, and we're going to get a little bit more into that in a little bit as we talk about how China's how this whole trade war, how China plays a significant role in this whole crypto space, right? Now, going back to what China has been doing over the last few years, China has invested in the last 4 years alone over $1.9 trillion, almost $2 trillion in their manufacturing capabilities. We're talking about factory construction, we're talking about technological upgrades, and they have been able, through these upgrades, through this investment, to be able to just produce things at a significantly more competitive price point than anybody else. China's exports grew by 13% in 2023. They grew by an additional 17% in 2024. They're probably going to grow by another 15 to 20% in 2025, right? Maybe this trade conflict slows it down a little bit, but I can't see it falling under 10%, because what China has been doing is building relationships with countries other than the United States. So as America makes Chinese products more expensive, and right now it's paused, but it may come back, the tariffs on other countries as well, you might find other countries gravitating towards China. We've seen a lot of the Asian countries gravitating to each other. We see Russia looking to get more and more in bed with China. We see in Africa looking to get more and more in bed with China. So maybe this might backfire. We don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but America might succeed in pushing China into the arms of the rest of the world, or pushing the rest of the world into the arms of China, right? Now, as it relates to Bitcoin, as it relates to cryptocurrency, some of the things that we've seen happening is that, of course, the market volatility has been significant. We're going up, down, not too much side to side. A lot of talk about market manipulation, but a couple things are happening here. The instability in the markets especially in the stock market, are bringing more and more people's eyes to Bitcoin as a safe haven asset. And then we see a significant devaluation in the Chinese yuan, right? And generally, what we've seen in previous years is that as the yuan weakens, Chinese investors seek refuge in alternative assets. One of these asset classes that they've traditionally sought refuge in has been Bitcoin. So if this continues, because what we're seeing right now is that the yuan was trading at a 17-year low, right? We might see some people trying to some flight of capital from China into Bitcoin, but in the long term, I think it just is going to create more concern, more fear around fiat currencies, and maybe a decentralized option might create more of an advantage for certain people. But back to the real crux of the matter. We talked about China. We're talking about China as a manufacturer. We're talking about China and their contribution to the crypto space. One of the biggest parts of that is that China is one of the biggest manufacturers of or producers of application specific integrated circuits, also known as ASICs, or people know them as ASICs miners, which are essential for the efficient mining of Bitcoin, right? And it's not even by a little bit. Chinese companies like Bitmain have established significant presence in the ASIC market. Bitmain alone is estimated to control approximately 80 to 90% of global market share of ASICs mining hardware. So, what does that mean? With these tariffs, it is now going to become that much more expensive for US-based mining operations to retool, to upgrade equipment, to be able to operate profitably as it relates to the mining of Bitcoin. Now, why this is important is that President Trump talked about making America the home for Bitcoin, the home for Bitcoin mining. And I don't know if he contemplated all these things in his rollout of these tariffs, right? Because America, particularly, but a lot of other countries rely heavily on Chinese made ASICs mining operations, right? So we don't know. We don't know what is gonna become of the US mining industry if this thing continues or is sustained for a long period of time. But I think that is going to be significant, right? Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think a lot of countries, maybe by force, growing the balls because they don't want to be blackmailed or beholden to the US. I mean, us right here in the Caribbean, we have the US forcing our hands as it relates to who we could do business with, who we can't do business with. But just from a strict dollars and cents perspective, America doesn't have the resources to manufacture a lot of the things that the world needs. And a lot of us here in the Caribbean and on this western side of the world do most of our shopping through American sites, through American distributors. And if the prices, because of these tariffs, go up significantly, what it's going to do is going to force us to go directly to the source. So we're going to skip the middleman. We're going to skip the US based companies, and we're going to start ordering directly from China, right? So you are now, and when the world starts allowing each other to trade in their own currencies, one of America's biggest exports is the US dollar. Part of what gives America the strength that it has is that there's a lot of demand for the US dollar. Last year, there was a lot of talk about energy products no longer being traded in US dollars, the petrodollar. They staved off that scare, but I think we're going to see more and more of that, where countries are trading between one another with their own currencies using things like Bitcoin. I think recently I saw something where Russia executed one of their first trades between themselves and China in using Bitcoin. So what they're doing basically is forcing people to trade with each other without the US dollar, and they are diluting their own leverage. So I don't know. We're gonna see. The US cannot manufacture what the US needs. and not in the short term at least. And then even for a business to think about investing that money, or for a bank to loan that kind of money to a business to invest in all the manufacturing infrastructure that they're going to need, they're going to need to be guaranteed that these tariffs are going to remain for not just 4 years while President Trump is in office, but for the next 10, 15, 20, maybe 50 years, so that they could recoup their investment and make a profit. And, you know, a lot of these things were put in place through executive order. What does that mean? That another executive order could probably remove them. So I don't see it being good business. But, I mean, like I said, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know. He has some of the most brilliant minds, hopefully, whispering into his ears. Yeah, I mean, Temu, shipping direct to Trinidad, AliExpress, Shein, companies like Miami Direct now trying to get a direct route into the Caribbean, because they see that Temu is now shipping furniture and stuff direct to the Caribbean. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what the play is. I don't know what the long play is. Maybe it's just a cash grab for them and their friends. But for me, I think this hits America and hastens the decline of the US economy. But that's just my 2 cents, my 2 sats. What I believe to be true, despite everything that's going on, all this instability, adoption of Bitcoin is inevitable. Adoption of this decentralized financial system that runs on top of Bitcoin's blockchain is inevitable. So stack your sats, whether it's 1 at a time, 5 at a time. If you could afford to do 1 million at a time, do that. But 21 million today, tomorrow, and forever. So you do you. As always, thank you guys for being with me. Be blessed. Illuminati. OUT. Out. Cheers.